Hello, Serious Survivor here. Make sure to throw a like and subscribe to the channel if you can. It really helps us out. We've got a lot to talk about in these next two videos and a huge amount of subjects that we need to focus on. And things are taking a turn for the worse. But before we get started, a quick word from the sponsors of this video. Now, if you've been keeping up with the news, or even if you haven't, you might have heard the word tapering being used a lot. It's the new Fed buzzword, and you'll hear all kinds of meanings for it. But what it really means is Washington has to repay around $30 trillion it borrowed. Guess where that's coming from? Yep, your pocket. Janet Yellen said we'd never see another financial crisis in our lifetimes when she ran the Fed. Now, just 4 years later, she's warning of catastrophe, and here we are. Our friends at Noble Gold can keep you safe and protect you whatever happens next. By starting a precious metal IRA or 401k, you can fight the coming wave of inflation and ride out the storm with your savings intact. And as a bonus and a thank you, you get a free 5-ounce solid silver America the Beautiful bullion coin with each qualifying plan you start this month. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com or call us at 877-646-5347. That's 877-646-5347.
Today, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist. It is 100 seconds to midnight.
The NWO has taken center stage in today's politics. Although they seemingly operate behind the scenes, the truth is they operate right before our eyes. And they often make note of this, and they often talk about this, and they often flaunt this in front of us everyday average citizens. It's right there in front of us for anyone that wants to see.
Thomas Paine wrote many years ago, "These are the times that try men's souls. These are the times that try men's souls."
Try men's souls.
What we see taking place in today's society is something that books were written about years ago, movies were written about. What we once thought as fiction has now become a part of truth and fact. We've heard of totalitarian societies, and we've thought about dystopian futures, and we've thought about how the future would be under one world government or controlled by one controlling entity that dictates the standards, the laws, the regulations for not just the entire world, but for every individual in it. And this includes our thoughts, what we're allowed to think, what we're allowed to say, what we're allowed to share, and definitely what we're allowed to do.
For yielding. Look, we've seen the worst 10 months of any administration in history. We went from a secure border to chaos. We went from safe streets to violent crime. We've seen stable prices turn into inflation and empty shelves. The respect around the world we had is now turned into the debacle that was the exit from Afghanistan. And we went from peace in the Middle East with the Abraham Accords to thousands of rockets being fired on our friend and ally Israel, not to mention energy independence, to now the spectacle of the President of the United States begging OPEC to increase production. But what scares me most is what this administration and Democrats are doing to freedom. Every right we enjoy under the First Amendment has been assaulted over the last year. Your right to practice your faith, still places today in the country where a full congregation can't meet on Sunday morning. Your right to petition your government, your right to assemble, freedom of the press, freedom of speech, every single one's been attacked.
One by one, inch by inch, our rights are being taken, and they're being taken on such a minute level. And this is why a lot of people don't realize this, is because the government itself is not coming out and just taking all of our rights at once, because they know that that would never work. They're doing it the smart way, if you will. And they began this decades ago. This didn't just happen with the Biden administration. The takeover of the government, which is what I call it, a government takeover of our nation, is basically began decades ago with small changes to laws that we saw, little implementations that the left has been doing. And this has been happening on a local level.
Welcome to our latest webinar. The subject of today's webinar is the New World Order after coronavirus.
In the decade ahead, i.e. over the 2010s and culminating in the early 2020s,
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
With every new regulation, with every new mandate, we move step by step closer and closer to a new world order.
And that's why I wanted to speak to you today about the new world taking shape around us, about the prospects for a new world order now within our reach. In the coming weeks, I'll be talking in some detail about the possibility of a new world order emerging after the Cold War. But today, I want to discuss another aspect of that order. You see, as the Cold War drew to an end, we saw the possibilities of a new order in which nations work together. It refers to new ways. The quest for the new world order is in part a challenge to keep the dangers of disorder at bay. The world can therefore seize this opportunity to fulfill the long-held promise of a new world order.
While most people focus on politics and they focus on, the presidential campaigns, the people in the Congress and the House of Representatives, those seem to take all of the news time up, and that's what we hear about. We don't hear about the local elections. And this is what has more of an impact on us in general than some of the congressmen and House of Representatives, politicians such as that, than the impact that they have on us on a personal level. Because if we think about it, our hometown politics affects us much more on a day-to-day basis than a law passed by Congress. Well, of course, depending on the law. But this has been going on for a long time. The left has been infiltrating our small communities, our local councils, our town councils, our city councils, the mayor's office, the offices such as that on a city and county level, that they have a lot of control in this nation, and things have already been going. Like when we talk about the discussions we see right now about some of the curriculum that's being heavily debated, that's being pushed in the public school system, this didn't happen overnight. This had to be developed, and it had to be put into place and then finally enacted. So this has been in development for years and years and years.
We can find meaning and reward by serving some higher purpose than ourselves, a shining purpose, the illumination of 1,000 points of light, a new world order.
And what we're seeing is their plan now leaving the local level and has infiltrated the deep state, the government nationwide. And this has been going on for a while. We've heard about, drain the swamp and terms like that. And it would be nice if we could do that. And at this point, I believe that may be what we need, is a complete political overhaul. And I don't mean the system itself. I mean, there's a lot that needs to be changed about the system, but the people that are there. The same ones in office for years and years and years, and yet we complain and wonder why things aren't getting any better. It's because we've got the same people who are working against this nation and against the principles and the foundations in which this nation was built on, working against that, continuously getting reelected, which in itself draws a lot of questions. But you can't question anything such as an election on YouTube or any of these other forums these days. Another issue that just shows or proves that our free speech is under assault. And we've all seen this. And some people aren't taking it serious enough. And they may think, well, it's just a YouTube channel that gets shut down, or it's just a Facebook page that gets closed down. But this digital age that we live in, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, whatever platforms you personally use, then these are platforms we actually do get a lot of our information from. And these are platforms that are important to us. And they're almost along the lines of a public utility these days, in my opinion. And that's because so much is required to be done on the internet.
What's been going on in the last 20 years, because the COVID crisis is really the first genuinely 21st century crisis. The economy has also become digital and data driven. The number of cell phones has gone up from less than 1 billion 20 years ago to over 8 billion today. 4 billion regular internet users, over 1 billion broadband subscribers. And the global population has gone up by 1.5 billion people in the last 20 years. So over 90% of the world's data is estimated to be less than 2 years old. 2.5 quintillion bytes are created every day, and the global economy is digitally driven. And I think we've got to recognize that tension between the global economic reality and the political structures which are not capable today of managing the process of where we are. The world is going to be poorer after this epidemic is controlled. And I think inevitably we're going to see greater government control of economic activity, public taxpayer funding into whole areas of the economy which previously were pretty much left to the private sector. Inevitably, that funding is going to come with greater political strings, to put it crudely. The global economy, if you like, is going to be moving to a different politically driven model, as well as the economic slow burn crisis that we're moving into. And against a background of global institutions and national politics, where there's a lot less trust and a lot more pressures. It's ironic that at a time when global trade investment, and particularly digital, that we're struggling with institutions. 20th century institutions have proved to be too rigid to deliver what we
Basically,
need.
I wanted to focus on or talk about how the digital life, I guess you would say, how this cyber world is taking over our physical world. And it's doing that step by step. And this is what the NWO wants. They want the world to be controlled by a digital currency, a digital monitoring system, and everything to be done digitally, except for, of course, some manufacturing. So we're headed towards a difficult place for people who are not rich, let's put it like that, and people who do not succumb to the fear that the government is spreading. Those of us who are not afraid to voice our opinion and stand by what we truly believe in, we're going to be the ones that face the hardships, because we will be the ones that are taken off of the employment lines. We will be the ones that are denied health insurance, and we will be the ones that are denied basically travel through from one state to the next and things like that. And it's really getting this bad with what we're seeing. It's not there yet, but expect this winter to be a major supply chain issue.
How do you expect the world of business to change in 2021?
Well, it already has, and we really believe it's for the better. The old guard is being swept out, and there's no going back. So everyone's going to have to adapt. We're looking at helping companies reposition themselves for the new world order. And the new world order, for what took our generation 10, 15 years, these people can do it in 3 or 4.
For companies, even in tough economic times such as we have today, the so-called dark winter.
This winter is going to be one of the most difficult winters that we have ever faced in the last 40 to 50 years, probably longer. And I don't just mean temperature-wise, but the temperatures are going to play a bigger factor this year than they ever have before, with the rising gas prices that we see. And I'm not just talking about gas, gasoline for the vehicles. I'm talking about natural gas. Those prices are expected to skyrocket this winter season. And that heating oil for your heaters, your home heaters, the cost of electricity, this is all going up. Those that get their electric power from nuclear facilities may not be as affected as much as those who get their power from fossil fuel using facilities. So it's going to go up and it's going to increase. Now we see the mandates that are actually going to start coming into effect very soon. We're going to see police officers who are taken off the job because they won't get a treatment. We're going to see other workers taken off the job because they won't get a treatment. And a lot of people will think, well, this isn't going to affect me, so what, there's a few less police in my city. Well, it's not just the police, but it's the EMS, it's the paramedics, it's the doctors, the nurses who won't. That's going to have an impact on you, whether you believe it or not. But then think about the other side. It's the clerical workers. It's the managers, some of them. It's the other office workers that work for the government that handle cases like food stamps, that handle disability, that handle SSI claims, that handle all this. And they're going to be so backlogged and so short-staffed also that a lot of people are just going to fall through the cracks and are not going to get the assistance or the help they need. We're not going to be able to count on the government unless you accept the treatment, and that is an absolute fact. They're pretty much telling us that right now.
A prime venue for discussing great global challenges.
It takes years to build a new vaccine. A new way of building vaccines. In less than a year, a novel vaccine They're called DNA RNA vaccines, and so we'll to build specific vaccines. We need vaccines for a lot of things, not just epidemics.
And this is going to be a very, very difficult winter. The best advice, and I'm heeding this advice myself, and a lot of other people I'm sure will agree with me, is to make sure you are self-sufficient. Make sure you're self-sufficient. For people that live in a heavily populated urban area, an apartment complex or something like that, you're definitely not going to have the ability to grow your own food and to go out and hunt and fish. So that's a precarious situation. You basically have one of three options. That's to store food, to plan on just being one of those who take food, or leave the area. Now, that is a huge consideration. Food and water. Food and water are very important. For me, out here in the country, I got a creek running through my property. I've got food, and I have the ability to grow if necessary. But a lot of people don't have that, so you have to take this into account, and you have to plan for that. And when you're planning on purchasing food, you have to look at what is portable that you can carry with you too. And that's why a lot of these, and I'm not saying buy it from the ads that I put out, but a lot of these companies that sell the 25-year food, they come in these buckets that can be stacked easy. They're not too heavy, and usually you can take two of the buckets and combine them into one and save yourself some storage space there and use the bucket for other things. But food and water are going to be essential. Financial. Don't spend any money that you don't have to right now, because in 3 months, 4 months, you're not going to have the money to spend. So everything you can save now will keep you in that home a little while longer, will keep your power bill paid a little while longer. If you're going to spend money on tangible items that you can either trade or you can put to use as survival items. And that would be more food, more water, medical supplies, things like that. When the economy does go bad, there seems to be a stereotype out there that a lot of people do talk about, and they say, well, when the economy goes bad, it's 72 hours and the whole country will be rioting for food, and I don't believe that's going to be the actual case. It would take a complete collapse of the government itself to see something to that effect, because if we look at the past, even through the Great Depression, crime rates truly did not rise in the Great Depression. They were high, but they were high before, and they actually went down towards the end of the Great Depression. Now, I'm not saying there won't be crime, because there will be. There will be. People who don't have food or money will try to take food or money from other people, and that's just what's going to happen. But it's not going to become like a complete lawless society. It's going to take a breakdown of social services for that to happen. It's going to have to be no police on the streets, no medical care. It's going to have to take a complete breakdown before we see true anarchy throughout the U.S. Now, I know we saw it with the riots that happened, a couple years ago, and the riots that were going on. We saw that, but if we really think about it, that was isolated to particular areas. It was not nationwide. And what I'm saying about that is, a lot of people will plan simply to fight off the hordes, and you do have to be ready for that. Because with the increased panic and people going hungry, basically trying to feed themselves, and some people even seeing this type of collapse as maybe an opportunity to do things that wouldn't normally be allowed to do, the need for self-defense is evident. The need for a firearm, a means of protection, and the ability to use it. Now, a firearm doesn't do anyone much good if you do not have the training and have never taken it out and practiced with it. You should be as familiar with your personal firearm as you are with your own hands. If it's not comfortable in your hands, and if you're not comfortable pulling the trigger, then you haven't practiced with it enough. But this is definitely something that's going to be necessary and can possibly make the difference between your family's survival and someone else's. Another thing to think about is electricity, because that'll be one of the things that they won't hesitate to cut off. This is generally going to be solar panels of some type. There's so many out there to choose from. They're not that expensive these days. If you're in an apartment, make sure all of your stuff is portable. What I mean is, don't get solar panels mounted on your roof. Of course, you're in an apartment, so you can't carry them with you. You want to make sure you got some portable devices you can take with you, and a means of self-defense. And portability is important, because if you do have to leave that apartment or urban area, then you're going to want to carry some of these devices with you so that you can charge your GPS, your cell phones, or other devices, and have a means of power when you're out on the road or bugging out to a location. But I just wanted to talk a little bit today about some of what we see going on and how difficult things are going to be. And I'm really concerned for a lot of people out there who aren't ready for this. The people that blow it off will be the first ones knocking at your doors. And the people that blow it off, and when they get hungry, they'll be the first ones coming to try and take. So I'm hoping that some of those people will listen and will at least think about it. What does it hurt? If you're not a prepper and you're watching this video, first of all, I'm surprised you watched this much of it. Second of all, why would you not store a little bit of extra food for your family? It seems irresponsible to not do so. To me, it seems irresponsible. If you have money for a nice vehicle and you have money for a nice home, but you do not have 3 to 6 months of 25 years survival food in your basement, then you are behaving irresponsibly and you're not taking care of your family. I'm sorry, but it's true. In this day and age, if you do not have survival gear and emergency supplies, it's not just that you're not a prepper, it's that you're not truly doing everything you can to take care of your family. Well, I know a lot of people watching this, we've got our stuff in order and we're doing the best we can. So I guess time will tell, and we'll just see how this plays out. Thanks a lot for watching. God bless everybody out there. For now, Seer Survivor, out.